So away we go. Quick overview of the plan for today. There'll be an introduction into Nephos technologies by myself, Scott Galloway, account director over here at Nephos, before moving into an introduction on the Morpheus platform by Jonathan Langbridge, EMEA account executive, and then forwarded on to James Smith, who is EMEA senior systems engineer for Morpheus data. And then we'll finally round off with some Q&A questions at the end, should you wish. So I think a good place to start is certainly what Nephos do and who we are and where we see the market going currently. So in essence, what we do is we design, deliver next generation data center infrastructure. And what do we mean when we say that? Well, we utilize three key components or three pillars to do that. And they are largely the fact that we are cloud first. So we tend to utilize products that are open API driven, they are software defined or hardware agnostic technology sets that actually allow you to change the way you consume your IT and achieve a public, private or hybrid cloud deployment. We do that independently so that we can work with the new and emerging tech space, and we do that so we haven't built our own data center and filled it full of stuff that we need an ROI against. We can do that on a consultative and bespoke basis. And we're also very proven in this market. So certainly in the new and emerging tech space, we've had a lot of experience in deployment of POCs and trialing and actual physical live environments. So customers find a lot of value in the fact that we've worked quite heavily in this space and we've got a good understanding. So we've got a fair few customers on the books, large and small customers alike. But what they all tend to buy into is our view of what a next generation data center should look like. But also, as I mentioned, our knowledge and value inside of that emerging space where we can spot the different nuances that occur and how each of the different technologies within that space would offer the sufficient value to the relevant parties moving forward. So I think if we were to take a look at what a typical data center would look like in today's environment, it typically is quite complex. It's hard to scale. It's got different layers to it that have grown over the years and different technology silos associated to that. That in itself, it causes inefficiencies. So you've got things like write data in the wrong places, storage silos and duplication, and a lot of mismatched architecture where there's not a lot of accountability that comes in between those different layers within the data center. And also you're physically restricted. So in a world of what is now a web scale or a cloud scale environment for many customers, having that physical restriction inside the data center is something that's becoming less and less desirable, but obviously more and more costly as well, trying to maintain that. So this problem typically only gets worse as well when we expand that out to multiple sites and we incorporate different multiple user groups within that. So bringing that into more of a unified environment is obviously something that people are looking to take advantage of moving forward. Now, when this comes to a DevOps environment, what we see is this central IT system in one major data center or many is largely protected and run by a central IT team. And that in itself can cause friction and frustration when dev teams are looking to quickly provision new instances on the fly so that they can actually test the code that they've been working on to understand whether it can go to QA or not. So this process generally leads to either a meeting with the operations team, or it can be something like a help desk ticket with the associated SLA. And that ultimately results in lost time and a lack of innovation with regards to getting that code deployed. So one advancement, which has been a big help in this space and adding more fluidity to the process or to the DevOps process and making it a viable methodology, has been the emergence of the public cloud and certainly the ever-growing adoption of the public cloud inside enterprise business worlds. So the public cloud, as we know, offers offers large-scale on-demand services that developers have utilized to maintain momentum during their projects and achieve efficiency in the workflows. However, they do this with largely disregard of the costs associated with this ad hoc purchasing. So whether it's on a personal credit card or whether it's on a company account, there's obviously a lack of transparency regarding logging and auditing associated with these purchases. They can leave quite a bitter taste in the mouth of certainly the finance team, but also it can also lead to the creation of shadow IT. Now, shadow IT doesn't only have to exist in a public cloud space, it can also exist in a private cloud as well. If you've managed to circumnavigate around that central IT team and get those provisioning rights to be able to deploy in the hypervisor layer in the private data center, you then have the similar sort of problems that persist. That can usually take shape in probably two different forms. So one, IT might find some unaccounted for servers due to audits or cleanup tasks, yet without knowledge of what's running on them, on who they belong to. They tend to be forced to ensure that they comply with company regulations in terms of policies and compliance, and they need to back those servers and those instances up, which obviously drains more time and resource. Or the other option is when the dev team or whoever the end user is comes to the IT team and asks for a restore on that instance from a particular point in time, and IT has no awareness that instance even existed. It could take them a couple of days to realize what's going on and be able to bring that back through if they can at all. But again, it's more time that's required in the process. So, excuse me. So obviously these are fairly general challenges that most people are seeing in the environment today. And there's sort of three key areas moving forward about how we can try and change that environment, and that is largely done already in certain circumstances. So we're looking to simplify, we're looking to collapse down multiple racks of legacy infrastructure into only a couple of you. We're looking to adopt virtualized and container-based workflows moving forward. Excuse me. We're looking for optimization, so utilizing software-defined technologies on top of x86 commodity infrastructure. We're looking to increase utilization of current resources and actually get a deeper understanding of the true requirements that are currently there, as well as scaling on demand. And we're also looking for that automation layer. So obviously automation plays quite heavily in the DevOps space, but we're looking for automated provisioning of pre-built templates that could be maintained from a centralized location. We're looking for automated assignment of backup SLAs to newly created instances. And we're also looking for self-service deployment of application templates across all infrastructure stacks. And importantly, we're looking to do that at web scale. So we want to be able to do that across both private and public cloud infrastructures. So these three approaches would pretty much always feature in a DevOps workflow. And for that, there's already an array of technologies that are there in the market today that can allow you to work towards running this agile application lifecycle process. So some names such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Python, Jenkins, and so on. However, there is a growing issue associated with having all these technologies running in the dev environment, and that is essentially a lack of control. So it's not only a lack of control, but as we said before, it's a lack of transparency and a lack of management with all of these different technologies. Having the multitude of solutions contributing to the application lifecycle management process, but without a central point of control, can bring with it the same issues that we've associated with what would be typically a legacy infrastructure stack, which results in lack of consolidation, a lack of ability to talk between those different technology stacks, and also a lack of accountability in times of error, etc. So what we're looking for, and effectively what is the main topic of today's conversation, is that importance of having a management layer, which can effectively act as the glue amongst all of these different technologies, and it gives benefits not just to the management who can actually get more insight into this regards to auditing, logging, chargeback costing, etc. But it's also going to give a benefit to the dev team, because they can still use all of the applications and tool sets that they know and love and the coding languages, etc. But they're going to do that in a managed environment that's got more standardization around that different deployment method, and it's going to make for a much more cohesion between the management and the dev guys alike. So this is obviously where we come to with Morpheus. So Morpheus is in fact that management layer, and it's there to act as the conduit between the public and private cloud, and being able to deploy applications and application stacks into any of those different cloud environments. But it's also going to do that by understanding and delivering role-based access controls, and as we mentioned, the reporting and logging, etc., that comes along with the features that you'd be looking for. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan Langbridge, and he's going to start the presentation from the Morpheus perspective.
Thank you, Scott. That was a great introduction and a nice way to lead into what we're going to talk about today. So if you can let me know, guys, when you can see my main screen. Does that show up, Scott?
Yeah, we've got that.
Great. So again, thank you, Scott, for leading in. And as Scott mentioned, we're going to touch on Morpheus data today, and in particular how we're helping customers with their DevOps style adoption and management, all through a single product, and why customers such as AstraZeneca and HSBC in the UK in particular have really benefited from Morpheus and the ways that they have done so. So I'm literally going to share just 5 or 6 slides to position Morpheus, and then we get into the fun part of the session today. I'll hand over to my colleague James, who can actually show you the product in action, show you how we work, and give you a bit more detail around how we're helping the customers I mentioned. So let me begin and hopefully give you a feel for why we're unique to anything that you may have seen already in this kind of space, or any tools that you may be using already within your organization. So Morpheus Data, we are a new product, we are a startup, but we have a different background, and this is fairly unique to a business in our space in the fact that we are actually privately owned. And we're privately owned by a company called Bertram Capital. And Bertram actually are a private equity firm which invests in low to no tech organizations, which they then look to make obviously more efficient, more dynamic, and ultimately more profitable for their shareholders. And the way they do this is Bertram have their own development team in-house, which basically bring in the latest and greatest in technology and deploy these into the businesses and drive performance. Bertram faced a challenge in doing so. They had around 15 companies on their books, all using completely different infrastructures, different development tools, different development techniques. How could they get a single view to manage this and drive application performance forward? How could they increase the go-to-market speed of these businesses? What they needed was a tool which would give them the same functionality to deploy applications, workloads, VMs, containers, on-premise or into the cloud. How could they do this? So they went out to the marketplace to try and find a product which could do this. They found tools designed for VMware, tools designed for Amazon, but they couldn't actually find anything that would give them the same cross-functionality, irregardless of how the development team was working or which environment they were deploying into. So what they decided in-house is that they would build and develop this themselves. So using open source projects and communities, the guys actually developed this product from the ground up to treat VMware the same as Hyper-V, Hyper-V the same as Azure, Azure the same as AWS. So Morpheus is unique because we have the exact same cross-functionality and services to developers, irregardless of the environment which they deploy. And this is why we're hopefully unique to anything that you guys have seen before. So what does Morpheus actually deliver to you as a business? If you took the software from Scott and I today and implemented it into your business, what would you actually gain? And we say we unify IT and development, but what we mean by that is we increase the speed in which teams can deliver what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And if you think about how IT used to be, teams would buy in infrastructures and technologies, and there would be a time before developers and users could become productive on this. DevOps, great term, and this is what we're all here to talk about today, is automating scripts, standardizing builds, increasing that go-to-market speed of a business. What can we take into the next stage, and how can we make that quicker? Morpheus, we believe we take that to the next level. And our view, or our strategy as a business, is a single platform with no more waiting. So we give developers and users the ability to have on demand the tools and resources which they need to create what they need on a day-to-day basis. They can spin up a VM, a container, an application, a database into any infrastructure, on-premise or public cloud, and they can do this freely. But at the same time, we want to give business that control back around what's being deployed, where this resides, the full costings involved in this deployment. But at the same time, we want to also maximize the resources used in these areas. How do we make sure the development team are being productive? How do we make sure they're using the right resource at the right price at the right time? And that's our vision as a business. We want to give the freedom and flexibility to the developers to be maximum and maximizing their time. But at the same time, we want to give control back to IT. What we had to consider to achieve this vision or achieve this functionality within our product is we had to look at what developers do on a day-to-day basis. So we had to consider the full application lifecycle. And you have everything from provisioning, making the application scalable and fault tolerant. You have to consider backup and recovery, login, monitoring, and finally decommissioning that application. And as I'm sure you're aware, and your business is probably used in different areas, there's a lot of great tools which add a lot of value to a business. Provisioning, for example, Scott mentioned some products in this area. So Puppet, Chef, Ansible, SaltStack, really add a lot of value to a traditional business. Backup and recovery is obviously crucial. Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik are the new guys in the marketplace. Again, great products delivering a lot of value to a business. The challenge here is that they're actually isolated products and tool sets. So not only are they costly in terms of license fees, they're costly in terms of resources and personnel to deliver these. What happens if a team loses members who had the knowledge in-house of how to deliver these? Again, challenges to a business. Wouldn't it be great if you could deliver some of this functionality through a single product, but at the same time manage these areas through a single user interface? And that's exactly what Morpheus delivers to a business. So you can do everything from provision to decommission your applications through a single product. We have our own load balancers built into Morpheus. We have our own backup and recovery, our own login, and our own monitoring. So you can use these where it makes sense within your development teams and within the development phases of a business. But as I mentioned, we actually integrate and manage the third-party products that we mentioned. So we integrate into Puppet, Chef, Ansible in the provisioning lifecycle. We have front and back end integration into products such as ServiceNow to really maximize the impact of Morpheus within a business and really give you that single view for both business and development teams. And just finishing off finally before we get into the meat of the session today and do a little demo of Morpheus, I want to touch on the fact that we allow you to become mobile across hybrid clouds. And what I've touched upon here is we give you the exact same functionality to deploy workloads on-premise as we do public cloud. And this is irregardless of the infrastructure: VMware, Hyper-V, OpenStack, Bare Metal, Azure, AWS, Google, exact same functionality. We take this a step further as well and do this across VMs and containers. So again, thinking in a cloud-centric manner, rather than having separate tools to manage your container infrastructure compared to your traditional VM infrastructure, Morpheus treats them identically the same. We also have migrations built in. So if you're looking to move workloads between environments, that is a functionality within Morpheus as well. But without going into too many slides, I'd like to hand over to James to actually give you a look and feel of the product, because we really feel the power of Morpheus is seeing it in action, and you will hopefully become a believer of what we're trying to say through the slides. So without further ado, I'll hand back to Scott, and he can hand over to James to do a quick demonstration of Morpheus.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Scott. Share my screen and a quick audio and visual check, please, guys. Am I here? Can you hear me okay? And
loud and clear.
You see it okay?
Yep, all good.
Excellent. Great, thank you. All right, guys, yeah, not going to take too much of your time, hopefully about 15 minutes. Going to do a very rapid run through of Morpheus to give you a flavor and why we feel that we've got something of interest to you if you're working in the world of DevOps. DevOps is about developers and operational guys working together in a more cohesive way, in a whole friendly atmosphere, and getting the agile development done for your organizations to make you far more successful. And that's really where Morpheus, as Jonathan explained, where Morpheus has come from. Is our guys, our DevOps guys, they are helping businesses in our portfolio companies be much better at what they do, improve their business processes, and they're doing it through application development and rapid deployment and rollout of those. And use all the tools you'd expect for continuous development, development pipelines, and so on and so forth. So that's really the foundation of Morpheus. But also, as well as giving the developers tools that they can use to do this great agile development, is also giving you some control around the management of that, visibility on it, and access to it from a more human point of view as well. So this is Morpheus. This is our portal interface, and you can see here what Jonathan was talking about, things like our provisioning engine, which we'll look at in a moment, our monitoring capability, where we have the ability to look at the applications that have been deployed. And it's not worrying about the actual infrastructure monitoring. It is about the application. Is the application available? Is it performing? Is it delivering to me? And checking those functions for you. So full application monitoring built into Morpheus. Logging has become more and more popular as a way of optimizing applications, understanding what's causing problems. Obviously, every developer will be familiar to reading log files, so we have that ability to aggregate those into a central place for access, either at an individual instance level for debugging a database or a web server, but also looking at holistically how is our application stack running. And then the backup engine. We're not trying to replace your enterprise backup engine with this, but just the ability, again, with the focus on the development teams. They are just about to make some changes. They want to put a stake in the ground and have that available to them just in case the change doesn't work. So Morpheus has built-in backup capability. And the key thing here for provisioning, monitoring, logging, and backup is standard functionality across any cloud. Scott mentioned around, DevOps can cause problems even in an internal infrastructure. So the ability to control provisioning into an internal infrastructure is, a great asset, but also more and more across the public cloud and using maybe AWS as your test and dev lab. You want some capability across those without investing in highly expensive tools and individual tools that you have to learn different ones for each cloud infrastructure. So that's a quick orientation. You can see that we can get to any of those from within here, but what we really want to have a look at is some key things like what do we support from an infrastructure point of view, what does Morpheus connect to. We've talked about clouds, and we refer to any hypervisor as a cloud, and that's what we can connect to and make use of. And I'll just show you very quickly in here. This is our range of supported clouds. So on the public side, we can connect to the expected ones, the Azures and the Amazons, IBM Bluemix and Google, for example, but also things like DigitalOcean and UpCloud, and more public clouds are becoming available in here as the product develops and as customers demand them. On the private side, we integrate into, again, all the expected things like Hyper-V, VMware, Nutanix, which is the native Acropolis, OpenStack. And we're seeing, especially in the DevOps world, the use of VMware infrastructure, but also a move towards OpenStack, a way of providing some infrastructure that the development teams can use because they want to provision across some hardware and lower cost of licensing, etc. Maybe KVM, that type of thing. And I've heard our key DevOps customer mentioned at the moment is AstraZeneca. That's very much their positioning right now. They've got a large VMware infrastructure, but also a large OpenStack development going on. And you can also see here, Jonathan mentioned things like, our support for containers, and I think that's very important. We're seeing a lot of customers looking at containers. They're a great way to spin up infrastructure very quickly in a very standardized way, and also in a very cloud agile way. You could have a container that runs on your VMware infrastructure today and very easily move it into, say, your AWS instances. So we have full containerized management built into Morpheus, but we are also integrating into some of the sort of established container orchestration engines, things like Kubernetes is there, and Cloud Foundry is coming along for further cloud management. But just to show you some of the areas that we can help you, if you like, get some control of what you're giving, the infrastructure you're giving people, and things like that. You can start driving policies within Morpheus. So we start provisioning through Morpheus. We can start driving policies, things like standardized naming conventions, using variables, cloud codes, etc., like that. We can also drive things like lifecycle management. So, if it's a test and dev cloud in a public on a public cloud, maybe keep a track on how long those instances are running, and perhaps set a deletion or expiry on those. So here in our demo lab manager likes keeping our lab nice and tidy. So after 1 day, I will get a message that says this instance will get deleted, and then it will be deleted after 24 hours. Obviously not you would normally set, you'd probably set that to 30 days, and after a day or maybe 5 days before the instance gets deleted, you would get a notification email. But the idea again is keeping your costs down. So we're trying to help the developers get their great flexibility and great capability in this DevOps play with all of their tools that they want to use, but also help the management layer keep control of costs and understand what's going on. So we have the policy engine there as well. And just to show you the provisioning piece, up here we have, once we're connected to clouds and we have our controls in place, we have the ability to build out libraries of instances. An instance to us is a machine of some sort, be it a CentOS box, a Windows server, or a Puppet server, or an Apache server. So they are the instances, and you create an instance library or a service catalog of things that can be delivered. And these can literally be anything that can be installed from an installation set onto a hypervisor of some sort. And in fact, we have an engine now that allows you to take an ISO, and from that ISO actually pre-configure an image, install it into our instance library, and then make that available. And these instances can be very simple, perhaps just a single OS, through far more complex things where it's an OS plus an application stack, and you want to deploy that application through applications that maybe are clustered for high availability, so database engines, etc. So you can see here a full feature capability around building out those instances and making them very bespoke to your requirements. And again, you have developers who want to develop on top of CentOS boxes. Make sure they're always running the right build, the right version, the hardened version that you want in your environment. So you can do all of that within the library function. We have automation where you can then set up workflows and tasks. Again, so you may want to, upon deployment, run some additional steps to maybe inject another set of tools into that you don't want in every build of your instances, or you want to add particular functions. So we have a full workflow and task engine, and indeed the workflows can be very task orientated. So you can see here during the process of a workflow, we can have it running pre-provision and during provision, when we stop and start the service, and even all the way down to tear down. So as we pull an instance down, we can also run a workflow. To show you that sort of thing in action, let's have a very quick look at instances. This is where we can do a deployment, and I'm going to very quickly manually deploy. Here's our service catalog. These are all the things that I've got provision or configured, ready to provide. In fact, this is our out of the box list. We provide this for you. So I want an Apache server. Hit next. Pick where I want that to run. I can run this on AWS. I could run it on Hyper-V. I could run it on Nutanix. Let's go to AWS and hit next. And here I get to decide whether I want it as a Docker image or as a traditional VM, if you like, with an underlying OS. Well, let's go with Docker for the moment, and I can pick a plan. And you'll see also, again, understanding costings and management, we're starting to bring price plans through. And we can even, at management level, start giving you cloud comparison pricing. In fact, it will work if I don't do it on Docker, because I don't have the Docker pricing built in. If I pick an image here, I can say, look, I could deploy this on Amazon at £6.25 or $6.25. I could do it on an internal cloud for $3.17. So we can have some cloud comparison. So again, driving that ability of giving the flexibility, but also keeping an eye on costs as well. So deploy as a Docker instance. Again, focusing on development requirements, things like adding environment variables, adding metadata to the image, and so on and so forth can be done. We can update DNS records for keeping your service catalog up to date. We will have integration into ServiceNow CMDB as well for service catalog updates. Hit next. Here's our workflow. Do you remember those workflows we saw? I can pick now a workflow. They can be built into the template as well, but here I can optionally select them. You can see we have a deployment capability as well. So if I want to deploy a WAR file onto this instance during the provisioning of it, I can do so. And we have a full deployment server built into Morpheus and integration into load balancers. This is an app server. I want it to stand up, sit behind a load balancer so that I can make this a scalable app, and I can do that as well. Here's that backup piece I was talking about. We have the ability to say, do I want this to be backed up? If I select this, it will be done on a schedule. Otherwise, if the backups are turned on the system, I can actually run those manually. And here we see the lifecycle management. So on this particular cloud, it's been cycled so it shuts down after 1 day. So the box will power down if I don't use it for if I don't notify the system after 1 day from provisioning, and after 2 days, it will get deleted. Hit next, hit complete, and that box will go away. Now, the way I deployed that, I used my naming convention. Here it is, JS demo, AWS Apache 1, spinning up, and in fact, that is already available. It's a container. I don't know if you guys have done any work with containers, but very rapid once you've done your deployments. But you can see here, it stood up. We will start to get performance data. We capture performance data here. Great, again, for understanding why is my application not working? Is it something to do with memory or storage? Is it a performance bottleneck on the box? Or just an understanding? And also, we're capturing all these metrics, and then we'll use those in reporting, which I will show you in a moment. But you can see here a range of things. We're going to get the log files coming through. So again, I don't have to go even into the box to see the log files. I can get them from here. I can look at and update the environment variables here for interaction with the system. And I can even console into it. We have a full console technology built into Morpheus, so I can remote into any type of instance that gets deployed through Morpheus on whichever cloud it's running on. And also, just for completeness here, as a web app scalability, I can have this auto scaling, so elastic compute, whereas we need more horsepower, we can spin up additional instances, and as we don't need them, they can be shut down. And you can see I'm doing all of this through a very simple to use interface with all the capabilities that I need to do the things that I want to this box. This is a production machine, it's running, and I want a copy of that. I could clone it off onto another instance and then have access to it for me to do some further development work. Taking that a stage further, what we've also built into Morpheus is more and more we're seeing people need to actually stand up application stacks. It's very rare that people just want a database server or they just want an application server. They tend to want multiple stacks. The biggest we've seen with one of our customers is actually 13 components in their application stack. And what we have here is the ability to build out those templates and predefine those so that you can start building them very, very quickly and easily. So I can come in and I can add tiers to this app, and I can start, again, pulling from my service catalog the components I want in here. and linking them together. So I can say, yep, the database server connects to the app tier, and then I can go through and pre-configure all of these as well. Start giving them names, start defining which clouds they are configured for, or make that free form so at deployment time it can be selected. And again, so we can build these all out, and everything then is locked down and made available as a template. We can preview that, see how it's architected, and we can also access, again, with that view of the DevOps type requirement in play, we have the ability to access this all as code. And so we could take this out in JSON or YAML and then make changes to it and import it back into Morpheus and create ourselves a new application stack if we want to do this in code, integrate it into GitHub, etc. So that's the application template deployment. And once we deploy that template, which is simply a case of saying add app, here's one I prepared earlier, Spud Marketing, hit next. It's been pre-configured for me. I just need to give it a name and give it a group that it's going to run in, hit next. Everything else is configured for me, including, just to show you the sort of capability here, this Tomcat server is configured to sit behind a load balancer, so it will provision and connect to a load balancer. It will also deploy a WAR file, a versioned WAR file onto here, and we will also do the same with the database. We will put we'll pass the database connections parameters to the Tomcat server, so the Tomcat server can connect to the database server, and we will also deploy a database into the database engine, all from simply hitting the complete button, and that will go away now and provision that complete stack. Again, this can be integrated. Morpheus is designed to be integrated into things like Git, GitHub, Docker, Docker.io, and also integrate with tools like Jenkins for your continuous integration type pipeline type development work as well. And just to show you that app running, this is one that was configured earlier and has been running. You see that two-tier app, the database and the app server. And in fact, the app database is a single instance, but the app server actually has a scale rule set on it. And actually what it's done is it's actually spun up 4 instances in there to have it scale. And you can see it's actually scaling out across multiple clouds. The other thing you can do, just so you're, with a focus on what this presentation is about, we have a full API sitting behind this, full Auth2 API. So everything you're seeing me do can be done via either API or a full command line, and we have a full command line available. And in fact, just to show you, I was playing around earlier. We can, for example, just simply put in a command here, and this will actually deploy an instance. So we're going to add an instance of Apache. We're going to give it a name of demo CLI Apache. We're going to put it into our AWS cloud, and we've given it a layout and a plan. Hit enter, and that will go. And if we go up here now into our Morpheus server, go up to instances, we should see if it responds to me. We will see a demo CLI Apache app starting there. There it is launching. So that was done through the API. So I've got engineers using the API, the command line, integrating and using my cloud standard API across any cloud that I'm using, because you're using the Morpheus APIs or using whatever tools they want. But I've got immediate visibility of it in my management console as well, so I can see that as it's running, it's coming up. I can look at the plan that's been used. I can look at how it's been configured, etc., all through here. So just show you that integration points. It's mentioned Chef, Puppet, Ansible. We absolutely fully support all of those. Customers have used us in place of a number of those tools because what they're after is standardized deployments. We can do that, but we can also, of course, integrate with those tools if you're already using them. Again, our larger customers are already using things like Salt. So we integrate with Salt so they can, during deployment, make use of their grains, their Chef recipes, etc. See again, integration into Git, GitHub, Jenkins. So all of these tools that are being used in the DevOps play. We also just sort of highlight some other areas that I think are just hidden away gems of Morpheus. we have things like we have a Cypher server built in. So this is secrets management. You know, I'm deploying an app server, I'm deploying a database server. I want the app server to be able to access the database server. How do I manage the credentials and so on and so forth? So we have a secrets management tool built into Morpheus. So the app server can discover the database that it needs and then request credentials for it from the Cypher server and get an encrypted password, user encrypted password that could be zoned as well or timed, so it could be a 15-day lease on that password. So you have all of that capability built into Morpheus and can be used through the command line. And we also have an archive capability. So again, sharing data, sharing files between team members can all be handled through Morpheus as well. And finally, just finishing off with the, what I think is also a very important other side of this is understanding what's going on. So Morpheus has the dashboard. We can see there's the demo CLI that I spun up. There's the other instances. So I'm getting a visibility of what I'm using, my requirements. We're seeing also, you'll see here we have an audit trail, so we can see what's going on. And then we can report on all of this as well. So we have the ability to go in, and this report engine is just being built out. This is a very basic version, but we can start going in and start going, well, how are we using Azure at the moment? What's our usage of Azure? How many instances have we got running? We can start getting into analyzing, what we've got running where, and are they being optimized? So, for example, overall performance of a machine versus its price, and we get a chart that's going to give us a quadrant of machines over here, particularly up here, being very expensive but aren't really being used. So why are they there? Can we get rid of them? Versus machines over here where they're heavily utilized but actually not costing us a lot. Maybe we want to put a bit more resource in there. And then that sort of also then rolls up into what we call our guidance engine, where we can start to help you get control of costs. Remember, I had the ability to power down machines if they're not used, or they have a lease on. But actually they don't at all. They needed 2 gigs, so we can start understanding our sizing and start bringing machines down in cost and size, or maybe even shutting machines down if they're not being used at all. And all of this is back-ended by a full multi-tenancy capability. And again, our large enterprises are using this in their ability to control who's doing what, putting their project teams together. And just to sort of show off a little, have this white labeled, so you can give your project teams their own looks and feels. And you can also have full role-based access control. So you can absolutely control who can do what within the system. You could have team members that can only provision. You have other team members that actually manage the infrastructure, and other team members that can only report on it. I'm going to stop there. That was a very, very rapid touch point on a number of what I deem the key areas of Morpheus, particularly around this world of DevOps, which is really where most of our customers are coming to us from, our enterprise customers, on what they're really trying to achieve inside their organizations and are successfully doing with Morpheus. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Scott to see if there are any questions and open the floor.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, James and Jonathan. Really appreciate that overview. If anybody would like to type any questions into the chat box, I'd be happy to read them out and pose them to the guys from Morpheus.
I'm not sure we've got a chat window, Scott.
I
don't have a chat window.
I did. I did go to allow that. So yeah, if that's not worked, then I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll get this we'll get a follow-up email sent out to everybody that was on the call. So if anybody has got any questions, please feel free to reply to that email, and we'll get a follow-up session confirmed. But just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for joining the call. Thank you, Jonathan and James, for your input and the overview you gave of Morpheus. And hopefully we'll see you again on another webinar in the short future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.